The wind howled down the city street, a chill that sliced through the bustling crowd. Pedestrians hurried along, their faces blank, lost in the rush of daily life. Amid the chaos, a small figure stood alone on the sidewalk. A boy, no more than 8, clutched a crumpled dollar bill in his trembling hand. His eyes were wide with uncertainty, his little heart pounding in his chest. Today, he was going to do something bold. Something he hoped would make a difference. Across the street sat a man, his back against the rough concrete of the alley, his clothes worn and dirty. His face, once full of life, now looked like a ghost of what it had been. His name was David, and he was lost in the weight of years spent on the streets, battling addiction, regret, and the crushing sense that no one cared anymore. No one, except for this little boy. Alex stepped forward, his small feet shuffling in the direction of the stranger. With a nervous breath, he approached David and held out the crumpled bill, his eyes filled with an unspoken kindness. David's gaze lifted, locking with the boy's. For a moment, time stood still. What happened next would change both of their lives forever, in ways they could never have imagined. Alex was just like any other boy, curious, full of life, and always eager to explore the world around him. Raised by his single mother, Sarah, he had grown up in a modest apartment on the edge of town. Their life wasn't easy. There were times when money was tight, and Alex's shoes were too small, and the refrigerator had more empty shelves than full ones. But one thing Alex always had was love, a mother who would go to the ends of the earth to make sure he never felt the weight of their struggles. Sarah taught Alex that kindness was the greatest gift he could give, no matter how small it seemed. Sometimes, the simplest gestures mean the most, she would tell him. Never turn away from someone in need. You never know how much it could change their life. And Alex had taken those words to heart. He'd seen his mother donate whatever she could spare, whether it was food, clothes, or a few dollars, to those less fortunate than themselves. It wasn't a grand gesture. It was simply about doing what felt right. Alex knew he didn't have much to give, but he believed with all his heart that even a little bit could make a difference. On a warm spring afternoon, when his mother had to work late, Alex found himself walking alone to the local park, where he sometimes saw people who had nowhere else to go. His mind raced with thoughts of what he could do for them. After all, he was too small to offer them a meal or a place to stay. But then, his gaze fell on the crumpled dollar he had in his pocket, the last of the pocket money he'd saved. He knew exactly what he had to do. Across the park, near a bus stop, he saw David. The man was slumped against the wall, his face hidden by the shadows. Alex's heart tugged. This was the moment. Without hesitation, he walked up to David, feeling the weight of his decision but also an overwhelming sense of purpose. He was going to offer David the dollar and show him that someone cared. David didn't know how long he had been sitting there, watching the world move around him. The sounds of the city were like a distant hum, a reminder of the life he had lost. It hadn't always been like this. Once, he had a family, a wife, 2 children, a house in the suburbs, but that life had slipped through his fingers like sand. The addiction had come first, the downward spiral second. Now, he was just another nameless face in the crowd, a man with no future. On this particular afternoon, his stomach ached from hunger, and his eyes felt heavy with fatigue. He had been sitting on the sidewalk for hours, hoping for anyone, to offer a kind word, a small donation, something. But most people passed by, avoiding his gaze, pretending not to see him. David had grown used to being invisible. He had stopped asking for help long ago, resigning himself to the belief that his fate was sealed. What was the point? He was just one more forgotten soul in a city that didn't care. Then he saw the little boy. At first, David thought Alex was just another child playing in the park, unaware of the world around him. But as Alex approached him, David's heart skipped a beat. The boy was holding out something in his hand, something crumpled and small. His eyes were wide with innocence, but there was something else in them, too. Compassion. Alex didn't say a word. He simply held out the dollar, his tiny hand shaking slightly. David looked at him, confused. "For me?" he asked, his voice hoarse from years of neglect. The boy nodded, his expression warm but unwavering. In that simple gesture, something shifted in David. He felt seen, something he hadn't felt in years. His chest tightened as the weight of the moment settled in. How could a child, someone so young, show him more kindness than anyone else had in months? It was as if the boy could see the man he once was, not the broken version that had been left behind. David took the dollar, his hands trembling. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice barely a whisper, choked with emotion. He didn't know what else to say. No one had ever been this kind to him before, and the overwhelming sense of gratitude made his heart ache. Over the next few days, David found himself thinking constantly about the boy. Alex's face, his bright eyes, and his quiet act of kindness had stayed with him, lingering like a light in the darkness. The simple dollar wasn't what mattered, it was the unspoken message that David still had value, that even after everything he had been through, he wasn't beyond redemption. Something in David's heart began to shift. He couldn't explain it, but he felt as though the boy had given him more than just money. He had given him hope. Hope that perhaps he wasn't completely lost. Hope that, with the right help, he could turn his life around. That evening, something happened that David hadn't anticipated. A woman walked past him, stopping as she saw him sitting there. She looked at him, really looked at him, her eyes soft with empathy. Her name was Sarah, and she had seen David before. But this time, something was different. She noticed the change in his demeanor, the way he sat straighter, the way his eyes had a hint of something more than the usual resignation. Sarah offered him a warm meal, and for the first time in years, David didn't feel ashamed. He accepted without hesitation. As they spoke, Sarah told David about the local shelters and rehabilitation programs, about the chance to rebuild his life, to find hope once again. It was the lifeline he had been waiting for, a second chance he never thought he would receive. Sarah had been kind to him, but it was Alex's gesture that had opened the door. David realized that sometimes change doesn't come from grand gestures. It comes from the smallest moments, the unexpected acts of kindness that remind us that we are all worth saving. The road to recovery wasn't easy. David had spent years numbing his pain with substances, and breaking free from those chains took time. But with each step, he carried Alex's kindness with him. Every time he felt like giving up, he thought of that little boy and the simple act of compassion that had restored his belief in humanity. David enrolled in a local rehab program and began to rebuild his life. Slowly, the darkness began to lift. He found a job at a local workshop, and with the support of his new friends and mentors, he started to regain his confidence. His mind cleared, and his heart healed in ways he never thought possible. Months passed, and one day, David found himself standing outside the same park where he had first met Alex. He looked around, hoping to see the boy once again. And there he was, walking hand in hand with his mother. David approached them, a smile spreading across his face. Alex looked up, his eyes widening in recognition. "Hello," David said, his voice full of gratitude. "I don't know if you remember me, but you changed my life." Alex smiled shyly, his mother nodding. "I'm glad you're doing well," she said. David bent down to Alex's level and handed him a small token of appreciation, a gift that was nothing compared to what Alex had given him, but it was all he could offer. "Thank you, little one," David said. "You gave me a reason to hope again." David's life had been transformed in ways he couldn't have predicted. He had found purpose again, and he had begun to believe in the goodness of the world. But the most important change had come from within. The boy's small act of kindness had reignited a spark that had been long extinguished. David was no longer just a man on the street. He was a man with hope, with a future, and with a deep gratitude for the simple moments that could change everything. And as for Alex, he continued to spread kindness wherever he went. He never realized how much of an impact his small gesture had, but in his heart, he knew that helping others was the right thing to do. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You never know how much your small acts of kindness could change someone's life. What will you do today to spread kindness? Leave a comment below and share your story with us. And make sure to hit the notification bell so you never miss an inspiring story like this. Remember, one kind gesture can change everything. Let's keep spreading love and hope in the world. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.